A mouse moves behind an owl, just a few feet back, off to the side. If you or I heard that sound, we'd flick our eyes toward it instantly, a half-second glance. No effort at all. The owl can't do that. Not because it's not paying attention, because its eyes are physically incapable of moving at all. Not left, not right, not up, not down. Frozen, locked in place inside its skull, like two glass tubes cemented into a wall. So when that mouse moves behind it, the owl has exactly one option: turn its entire head, and not just a little. Scientists have measured owls rotating their heads nearly 3/4 of the way around, almost enough to look directly behind themselves without moving their body an inch. Try to imagine doing that with your own neck. Most humans would black out. Some would die. An owl does it silently, instantly, dozens of times a night, and walks away completely fine. Today, we're going inside one of the strangest trade-offs evolution has ever made, and the bizarre biological workaround that makes it possible. To understand why an owl's eyes can't move, you first have to understand that they aren't really shaped like eyes at all, not the way yours are. Human eyes are roughly spherical, like small balls sitting in a socket, surrounded by muscle that lets them roll freely in almost any direction. Owl eyes are shaped completely differently. They're elongated, tube-shaped, more like a pair of binoculars built directly into the skull, and that tube shape isn't a random quirk. It exists for a very specific reason. A longer, tube-shaped eye allows for a much longer focal length than a round eye of the same size, which dramatically increases how much light the eye can gather. For a nocturnal hunter, that difference is everything. Owl eyes are estimated to gather 2 to 3 times more light than human eyes, with depth perception around 4 times sharper. That's the entire reason owls can spot a mouse moving through near total darkness, while we'd see nothing but black. But this incredible design comes with a brutal trade-off. A tube can't rotate freely inside a socket the way a ball can, so instead of being cushioned in soft muscle like ours, an owl's eyes are locked in place by a bony structure called the sclerotic ring, essentially a rigid ring of bone that holds the tube perfectly still. The eyes work brilliantly. They just can't move even a fraction of an inch. Now think about what that actually means for survival. You and I glance sideways constantly, without even noticing we're doing it. A flicker of motion in your peripheral vision. Your eyes dart toward it instantly. No thought required. An owl doesn't get that option. Every single thing it wants to look at has to be directly in front of its face, which means for an animal that hunts almost entirely by sound and sight in the dark, an owl would seem to have a massive, dangerous blind spot everywhere except straight ahead. If an owl relied only on its eyes, this would be a serious problem. A predator sneaking up from behind, prey rustling off to one side, all completely invisible to an animal that can't glance sideways to check. For most animals, this kind of limitation would be a serious evolutionary disadvantage, something natural selection would likely correct over time, favoring individuals with slightly more mobile eyes. But owls didn't evolve more flexible eyes. They evolved something else instead, a completely different solution to the exact same problem. If the eyes can't move, evolution's answer was simple: make the entire head move instead. Owls can rotate their heads up to 270 degrees from center, nearly 3/4 of a full circle. For comparison, most humans can turn their heads somewhere between 160 and 180 degrees before something has to give. But raw flexibility isn't the hard part here. The hard part is what that kind of rotation should do to blood flow. In humans, turning your head too far in one direction can pinch the vertebral arteries, the blood vessels responsible for carrying blood up into the brain. Turn far enough, and that blood supply gets cut off. That's part of why extreme neck rotation in humans is dangerous, and in rare cases has even been linked to stroke. An owl rotating its head 270 degrees should, by that same logic, cut off blood flow to its own brain and eyes almost immediately, every single time it turns to look behind itself, and yet it doesn't. Researchers studying owl anatomy discovered the animal has evolved an entire set of specialized adaptations specifically to prevent this from happening. Adaptations so unusual, they read almost like something engineered rather than evolved. Here's where this story becomes genuinely strange. Humans have 7 vertebrae in our necks. Owls have 14, twice as many individual bones, each one allowing a small amount of rotation, which together add up to that extraordinary total range of motion. But more vertebrae alone wouldn't solve the blood flow problem. So owls evolved something even stranger. Their vertebral arteries, the blood vessels supplying the brain, pass through channels in the neck bones that are roughly 10 times larger in diameter than what the artery actually requires. Think about what that extra space means. Even when the neck twists dramatically and the artery gets partially constricted, there's enough surrounding space that blood flow doesn't fully cut off the way it would in a human neck turned to the same degree. On top of that, researchers discovered owls have small pooling reservoirs of blood positioned near the base of the skull, essentially tiny reserve tanks, storing blood that can continue feeding the brain and eyes during the split seconds when rotation is at its most extreme. And the vertebrae themselves are arranged in a way that distributes pressure evenly across the turn, rather than concentrating stress at any single point that could pinch off a blood vessel entirely. 3 separate adaptations: extra vertebrae, oversized artery channels, backup blood reservoirs, all working together, silently, every single time an owl simply wants to look behind itself. If this level of hidden biological engineering is blowing your mind as much as it blew mine, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps stories like this reach more people. The head rotation solves the vision problem, but owls layered on an additional advantage most people never notice. Look closely at an owl's face, and you'll notice something unusual. The feathers around each eye form a distinct concave, almost satellite dish shape called the facial disc. That shape isn't decorative. It functions almost like a built-in hearing aid, funneling sound waves toward the owl's ears and significantly enhancing what the bird can hear. So even before the head physically turns to look at something, the owl's hearing has often already located it. The eyes might be fixed forward, unable to dart sideways the way ours can. But the ears, framed by that dish-shaped face, are already scanning the darkness in every direction at once. By the time that 270-degree head turn happens, it's rarely a guess. It's a precise, sound-guided movement, aimed directly at a target the owl already knows is there. Fixed eyes, a flexible neck built to compensate for it, and ears sophisticated enough to guide the whole system before a single visual cue ever appears. So why would evolution build something this complicated instead of simply giving owls mobile eyes like almost every other vertebrate on Earth? The answer comes down to a basic biological trade-off. You can optimize an eye for light gathering power, or you can optimize it for mobility. Doing both at once in the same eye at the same size isn't really possible. For a nocturnal hunter, the ability to see clearly in near total darkness matters more than the ability to glance sideways without turning your head. So evolution made the trade. Sacrifice eye mobility entirely and build an entirely separate system. The neck, the vertebrae, the blood vessels, specifically to compensate for that sacrifice. It's not the only way evolution could have solved this problem. It's simply the solution that happened to work, refined across millions of years, tested against every single owl that failed to turn quickly enough or lost blood flow at the wrong moment. What survived is what we see today. An animal with eyes that cannot move at all, paired with a neck capable of a rotation that would be genuinely dangerous, possibly fatal, in almost any other creature on the planet. 2 extreme limitations and 1 extreme solution fused together into a single, terrifyingly efficient nocturnal predator. So the next time you see an owl staring at you, perfectly still, unblinking, head tilted at some impossible angle, remember what's actually happening behind those eyes. Two frozen tubes of glass and tissue locked permanently in place, physically incapable of looking anywhere except exactly where the head is pointed, and an entire hidden system of extra bones, oversized arteries, and backup blood reservoirs built specifically to make up for it. Not a limitation the owl learned to live with, a limitation evolution turned into one of the most efficient hunting adaptations in the entire animal kingdom. If this changed the way you'll look at the next owl you see, subscribe to Birdhearts so you never miss the next hidden superpower in the bird world. And tell me in the comments, did you know an owl's eyes can't move at all? I'll see you in the next one.